Cousin falsely accused me of SA. Now my family is finally contacting me after almost 10 years. I grew up in what was probably the most normal of normal households. Parents worked a lot, but still managed to care for me and my 3 older sisters. We were never super close as a family, but never had any issues either. Same goes for my extended family. They always lived a few hours away, but we saw each other during summer holidays or Christmas and always got along great. But when we got older we naturally grew apart as everyone had their own lives. I'm 31 now. In 2014, when I was 22 and attending uni, I got a phone call from my mother that turned my life upside down. I remember I didn't even answer at first, because I was gaming with friends. But she called again immediately after the first call. This was an unwritten rule in the family. If you call twice like that, it's important. Like someone died important. So when she called again, I excused myself and answered, only to hear chaos in the other end. Like people were arguing. But when my mom realized I had answered, it sounded like she went to another room and closed the door. I just asked what was going on and I heard she was crying. My memory of this conversation is a bit blurry, but she basically asked me if I had something to confess to regarding E. E is my cousin on my mom's side and is 7 years younger than me, 15 at the time. At that point I hadn't even seen E for several years. I just said no and asked what this is about. She just cried even harder and started accusing me of SA-ing E back when we were children. That E had told everything to my sister, and that my sister told my mother and my aunt. E had told them that back when she was 9, and I 16, she'd been playing in my room when I came in and started feeling her under her clothes and kissing her. My mother screamed at me to say something, but I couldn't even speak. It was all so absurd. I remember thinking that must be some bad joke. The last thing I remember saying was that it's not true and that E is lying. But then my mom goes on saying that how E gave such a detailed description of where and how. Then she kept asking something like, did you do this? Did you do this? And I just screamed back at her no. Each time. It all ended with my mom putting me on speaker and both my mom and dad saying that they don't want anything to do with me and never to contact them again. 2 of my sisters texted me later that day, pretty much saying that I'm disgusting and then blocked me. I know it's weird, but after that call I went to have a long shower. To this day I still don't know why I did that. After calming down, I started calling and texting everyone, even E. No one answered and the ones who hadn't blocked my number by then quickly did so. The only thing I heard back was from my father who texted me to stop contacting them and that they need to heal. That was 9 years ago and I haven't spoken to anyone in my family since that day. To say this fucked me up is an understatement. I was living in a haze for weeks after that and hardly ate at all. It didn't help that this was right before I was supposed to defend my bachelor's thesis and was already stressed out. Luckily my co-writer sensed something was up and saved me by controlling the conversation so that I got the easy parts. Without him I would have failed. Needless to say, no one came to my graduation. Then started the worst period of my life. I spent the first year expecting the cops to knock on my door and arresting me for sexual abuse. I didn't land any jobs, just living off my saved money. I drank a lot and did oxy. I also grew resentful and violent. The only reason I didn't hurt anyone is because no one was around. My neighbor called the cops on me once after I had smashed a glass, but I managed to convince the officers that I had just dropped it, and they went away since there were no others inside my apartment. Instead of sleeping, I spent my nights planning how I could hurt E and make sure no one ever found out. Even thinking how I could actually do the things she'd accused me of, but much worse. I know, I'm not proud of that. I landed my first real job in my field in late 2015. Only then did things start to improve. I focused all my time on my job, as it gave me something normal to do. Recovery was a slow process, but I drank less and smiled more. I lived cheap and earned good money, so I made a point of buying myself a nice gift for my birthdays, a VR headset, a motorcycle, Lego etc. And last year I moved from my shitty apartment and bought a small house. It was an old dream of mine to have my own garage and a garden to care for. This has boosted me even more. So my life is okay now. I still got problems. I've been on antidepressants for the last few years and while they help, it's not in a happy way. They simply remove the dark thoughts and replace them with dead ones. My trust in other people is close to non-existent. I've tried dating, but only been on 2 dates with 2 different women. It's really hard to speak like a normal person when it comes down to it. And what would I tell a potential partner when she asked about my family? Oh, you know, they accused me of a heinous crime and we're not talking anymore. But I didn't do it, I swear. My field is very male dominated, so the only woman I really speak to is my therapist, who I like a lot. A few days ago, I received a text from my mother. It felt unreal and I was scared to open it at first, so I just stared at the notification for hours before opening it. Yesterday, a second text followed. Translated, they basically say, "Hi, my name. It's been so long since we talked. We miss you and want to know how you're doing." Here she writes a long text about my sisters and how my nieces and nephews are getting big. I didn't even know I was an uncle. Know that we love you and always will. Love, Mom and Dad. The second text said, "Hi, my name. We understand if you don't want to talk to us after what happened, but please listen. Last month, the subject of you was brought up at a family gathering. During this, E was downplaying everything that had happened to her. It got so awkward that she finally admitted that nothing happened and that she probably just dreamt it. We were all appalled by this. When we last spoke, we wanted to protect E and did the only thing we thought we could do. We know that's not excusing how you were treated. What E did was wrong and we're all angry at her. We have called everyone that knew and told them the truth. We all want to speak with you and your sisters want you to meet their families. Please write back if you can find it in you to forgive us. Love, Mom and Dad." So yeah. That's my situation right now. I haven't answered, but they no doubt know I've seen it. Truth be told, I'm seething. So many old, shitty memories are now stirring again. I don't want to forgive them and I wouldn't trust myself to be in the same room as them right now. Part of me wants to call my family and unleash everything on them, to guilt them with everything I went through until they all hit their rock bottom. Then dedicate my life to make my cousin's life as miserable as possible. The other part wants to ignore them and continue with my okayish life with my motorcycle and my garden to keep me company. I don't have any friends. The only people I speak to are my coworkers, but we're not really close. I've called my therapist's clinic, but they told me she's on vacation and won't be available for weeks, and I don't want anyone else than her. So that leaves internet strangers. So please, where to go from here? Do I ignore them and continue as is? Or do I answer? And if so, what to even write? I'm pretty sure meeting them in person would be a bad idea for a foreseeable future, but I'm not even sure how my life can improve from picking up those old threads. As embarrassing as it may sound, I've dreamed about the day when they apologize to be them throwing themselves to the ground and kissing my feet. Texting seems so anticlimactic now. Cousin falsely accused me of SA. Now my family is contacting me after almost 10 years part 2. So it's been around 3 months since I last posted the previous post and a decent amount has happened. Some for the better and some for the worse. For one, E is still a huge a-hole. Around a week after my family sent me the messages, she also reached out with a huge apology text. When I received it, I couldn't believe my eyes. She was talking about how she had mental problems and has been dealing with them for ages, almost as an excuse as to why she did this to me. She said she needed help and her parents were helping her get it. This seemed like BS to me because all my life I knew E. She was a beaming, radiant girl, until that dreadful day in 2014. The whole text felt like she was just feeding me excuses to why it happened, and then ending it off with the shortest actual apology. My original plan was to go on with my life and try to slowly make it better and better, but seeing this pushed me to my limit. I had to respond, and tear into her with the most vile words I could think of. In the end, the actual text I ended up sending said, "You think your mental problems are bad? Try being torn away and excommunicated from your whole family for 10 years when you were just in the infant years of your adult life, and see how bad those mental problems become. I am still trying to deal with all of this and the last thing I need is the culprit of my misery feeding me excuses as to why it happened. My other relatives may have been in the dark the whole time, but you knew the entire time, and it never dawned on you to say things sooner? You're lucky I didn't unalive myself at this point. My parents and sibling might be another story, but I will never be able to forgive you for the irreversible damage you have done to me and my relationships. Please, rot in hell and never contact me again." She hasn't responded, but I can see that she got the message because of read receipts. Maybe she took the hint to not respond. The good news is that I also responded to my parents. Nothing crazy in text because we really got the whole conversation out over the phone. It felt weird hearing their voices again. I used to relate those voices to being safe and home, but after what happened it was a whole new feeling. At first, I hated it. All the sour memories popped back into my brain from the day I last spoke to them. Those voices had been screaming at me for things I didn't even do. The conversation lasted about 3 to 4 hours, and while it was hard for me and most likely them, it was the most productive conversation I've ever had with them. I thought it would be a lot of excuses just like E, but to my surprise, they not only apologized a million times over, but told me everything they were in the wrong about. They said it was weighing on them all these years and now that the truth is out they don't know how they can live with themselves. The one really hard part was when I asked them why they didn't hear me out or believe their own son compared to a niece. They told me they struggled with it immensely but E had made it so believable that they felt they had no choice. I told them that instead of just cutting contact, they should have at least tried to get me help, but they gave me nothing to work with. They said they knew this and that was the hardest part. After the first year or two, they said they wanted to contact me and try to figure things out, but they ultimately decided that me being who I was would not talk to them and things would just get worse. That got me heated a little bit because who cares what type of person I am? What I really am is your son and that comes first. At the end we came to the conclusion that we will stay in contact. I am not going over to visit them or anything but it's a start. While there is still so much hatred in my heart for them, I feel like things can get better, and that's why I'm somewhat happy. Since that phone call, we frequently check up on each other, and conversations are slowly getting back to what they used to be. Maybe I'll visit them someday, but I don't know when that will be or how it will go. How am I supposed to hug and say hi to the people who threw me out of their life? Cousin falsely accused me of SA. Now my family is contacting me after almost 10 years. Final part. Hey guys, so I have another update on my whole situation regarding E and the SA. It has been another 4 to 5 months since the last update and I have some better news than worse this time again. To start off, a lot of people were telling me to sue or take E to court. While I agree that what she did was unforgivable and heinous, I don't feel like that will cause any good. The situation has been 10 years in the making and I kind of just want to be all over and done with it. Taking her to court would cost me thousands in legal fees that I just can't afford, and I also can't help but think of the fact that E never took it to court either. I know that's not a good excuse but it's just a thought. I am still in contact with my parents and you won't believe it but I actually visited them around a week ago. They also have removed contact with E, and I feel like her getting the same treatment I went through is similar to being sued in terms of punishment. Believe me, I would know. Visiting the parents went well. I haven't seen the rest of my family as I want the process to be gradual, but we met and had a nice dinner, of course. In my last post I said I didn't know how the greeting process would go. How was I supposed to greet the people who tore my normal life away? Well, the greeting went better than I imagined. I thought hate would win over me but I actually felt somewhat relieved when I saw them. Is that weird? Maybe it was the fact that seeing them meant maybe my life was getting back to the normal it was before, but I don't know. I didn't hug them until after because the conversation we had was pretty grueling. I didn't mean to rip into them but I felt I had to really get the point across of how much hurt they had caused me. At some point my mother cried, because of the detail I went into about my darkest times. They said they know they can't do anything to fix what has happened but want the future to be optimistic. They even opened the idea of coming home for Christmas and seeing the rest of the family, but I told them my plan about taking it slow and said I might be open to the idea. While I am still conflicted, that feeling of hatred is slowly going away and I am overall just feeling like a better person in general. I think the weight of the situation had pulled me down all those 10 years and now that I am free of judgment it feels good. I have also started dating now, and met a great girl that I am starting to slowly get serious with. Life is getting better. Who knows what will happen in the next 10 years after this, but for the first time in ages I feel like things are going up. For all those reading, please use my story as an aid to your personal problems and grudges. Things do get better, even if you have to wait 10 years. Found out my friends introduced me to my girlfriend as joke. They've all slept with her before. I've been with my girlfriend for 4 years now, and it's been the greatest 4 years of my life. She's the sweetest person I've ever met. She's hilarious, insanely creative, she's an artist, goofy and just the happiest girl you'll ever meet. She's always smiling and very outgoing. She's so energized and I'll admit it's sometimes hard to catch up with all her adventures. But wow, it's been so amazing being with her. My friends introduced me to her the summer we all graduated high school, and we immediately bonded. We're both into comics, anime, Marvel/DC, Dungeons and Dragons. We had so much in common. We just became super close very quickly. The fact we had so much in common made it easy for us to spend time together, going to conventions, anime events, game tournaments, superhero films. This all of course led to us officially becoming a couple, and the rest is history. My parents also are in love with her, which is honestly the cherry on top. It's nice to see my parents be so welcoming towards my girlfriend, although they've gotten a little protective towards her like parents lol. I plan to propose to my girlfriend later this year, as we always joke about getting married, having a weird geeky wedding and starting a family. And I really want that so much, so proposing to her is my main goal of 2022. Fingers crossed she says yes. I really hope so. Now this is where my friends come in. I have 3 close friends of mine, friends I grew up with since elementary. We all split up a few months after high school. They left to another city for college, so right now we all either just talk through Zoom chat or I go visit them once in a while. I decided to stay in the city I'm in, be close to family and my girlfriend. Well, I told my friends that I plan to propose to my girlfriend, that I believe I'm 100% ready to start a family with her and how excited I am to see how it goes. They kept asking if it was serious, even calling me a dumbass. They really were going at it with me, quite roughly. I just figured they hated the idea of marriage, so I ignored their comments. That's when they told me the truth, and holy shit, the proof they had made it even worse. They all said they met my girlfriend 8 years ago at midnight bowling. They met her through a friend of theirs that invited her that night. I don't know this other friend at all, so I can't say who it is. That's how they all met. They thought she was hot and cool, so they stayed in contact with her. After that my friends still continued hanging out with my girlfriend, smoking weed, playing video games, anime, and of course, sex. They told me they'll pass her around the group for fun, and that's practically why they were friends with her. They kept using the word slut, which crawled into my skin in such a negative way. So pretty much they just kept my girlfriend around for sex. All 3 of my close friends have slept her plenty of times. This lasted a good portion of high school, but of course I didn't know my girlfriend at this time cause she attended another high school. They decided they'll introduce her to me because they wanted to see if I can also get lucky, that it was all a joke to see if I can also end up having sex with her. I didn't believe any of it, but my heart completely shattered when they showed proof from Instagram messages. It was nothing inappropriate like pics or anything. They just showed me that they all indeed keep in contact with her in the past. And you know what they did? They made me the dumb guy and made all this a joke. They said I'm a dumbass for dating her, that I should have known better. They didn't expect me to date her at all, that my girlfriend was going to act slutty towards, but they were surprised she didn't. How the hell am I supposed to have known better? Friends introducing friends to a boy/girl is a normal thing. That's how I interpreted all of this. Also, I had no idea about their history with my girlfriend, so them saying I should have known better is ridiculous. I didn't see my girlfriend as sex object like them. I saw her a friend that I ended up falling in love with. She treated me very kindly, comforted me whenever I was sad, told me how much she loved me. We fell for each other. It wasn't just sex. The only reason my friends told me this was because they think me getting married to her is too far, so they expected me knowing the truth would lead to me dumping her. She's too much of a slut, man. Just let her go, one of my friends said. I just got off the chat, and they've been sending me non-stop texts ever since. I haven't replied. I don't feel like talking to my friends at the moment. I did peek at a few messages out of curiosity, and instead of apologies, I just got a lot of "dude, get checked bro. You might have caught something. It wasn't even serious. It was in a jokey manner, which is annoying." I approached my girlfriend about this, as polite as humanly possible, and I instantly regretted it. She broke down completely, which I'll admit kinda teared me up. I've never seen her panic so much. She was freaking out as if someone died. She kept apologizing, telling me she's never slept with anyone else while with me and saying she didn't know about the joke my friends were doing. She told me my friends simply invited her to hang out, and during the hangout they introduced her to me. That's how it all went. She says she wasn't aware of a plan or anything. You probably think I'm a slut, right? Is what she kept saying, which just hurt me to hear. She told me she loved me, that to please just ignore my friends to not break up with her. I just told her I loved her as well, and that what I know doesn't change my feelings towards her. She still thinks I'm going to break up with her, which I won't ever do. I just kept her in my arms, that's all I could do. I didn't want her panicking, so I just comforted her. I've been with this incredible girl for 4 years, created beautiful memories with her, and I'm not going to let what my friends have said to me ruin what I have with her. The reason why my girlfriend didn't tell earlier was because she cherished our relationship the moment we met. She didn't want to hurt me, and I understand completely. She says I treated her kindly, like a human being, and she appreciated that. We connected because of our similarities, and she felt more comfortable with me compared to my friends. She was afraid if I knew the truth, I wouldn't have considered being with her in the first place. My girlfriend thought I was going to think of her as a slut, which I absolutely would never have done. I'm not mad at my girlfriend. Why should I be mad? She didn't do anything wrong. Her past is her past and it's not of my business. Who she sleeps with is none of my concern. My feelings towards her haven't changed. I love her with all my heart. I always will. I'm mad at my so-called friends, because one being they're taking all of this as a joke, speaking of my girlfriend awfully, and the other being that this all started as a little joke between them. They didn't have good intentions when they introduced me to girlfriend. They simply passed her to me thinking I was going to treat her like a toy or a piece of meat. I'm just shocked. That's what I am. This whole thing has been mentally stressing me out, and I wish I didn't know about it. I love my girlfriend, but I'll admit the thought of her with my friends hurts me. I've cut all contact with my friends these past couple of days. I've been ignoring their calls and texts, and there's a ton of them. I just don't know what to do. I really don't. Also, the thought of my girlfriend immediately having sex with my friends kinda bugs me, because me and her took it slow. Maybe she did care about me compared to my friends, and didn't want to hop straight into sex. I also think this because even my friends said she didn't act slutty towards me, that she actually cared about me. You see, these are the stupid thoughts I'm getting in my head and I hate it. I'm personally still going to propose to my girlfriend. I'm not leaving her. I plan to cut contact with my friends and simply focus on my future. If any of you have any advice to share, I'll greatly appreciate it. I definitely need to relax my mind, that's for sure. My entitled mother demanded I hand over my house to her because my little sister is pregnant and needs it more than me. I, 31M, have a sister, 28F, that has honestly been the golden child to my mother but not my father for as long as I can remember. My parents divorced when I was a teenager because my mother cheated with an old high school ex-boyfriend and has always been controlling, manipulative and narcissistic. And sadly my sister was like her little mini, me. Our mother also seemed to believe she had total authority over me any time she so much as snapped her fingers. She'd snap them and order me around like a dog. It was demeaning. And my sister always backed her up too. So no surprise I went to live with my dad full time after our parents split while my sister stayed with mom. The two of them were very alike. And both pretty much stopped speaking with my father unless it was about money. Though I'm more like my dad. My father was very business oriented and started teaching me how to do his line of work as soon as I was 16. I got pretty good at it. And after 12 years of working for my father I was made a partner in his company. Things were great. But then about 8 months ago tragedy struck. My father had become somewhat immunocompromised due to being a heavy smoker for much of his life and died at only 60 years old after he caught C-19. I met my mother and sister for the first time in years after we had a socially distanced funeral for my father over video call. My father was cremated by his own request and buried in a local cemetery. So there was no body or casket. My sister seemed to grieve, but my mother looked indifferent the entire time. Though I honestly was not surprised. The last time she saw my father she screamed at him that he owed her more money, and then threatened to sue him. To which he just laughed at her. He'd paid alimony and child support as long as he was legally mandated to, and no more than that. And he even put $30,000 toward my sister's college fund. But 10 years after the divorce he was no longer legally required to send mom money anymore because of the judge's ruling. And she's by no means broke. She works the same job she has had for nearly 3 decades, fully owns the old family home we used to share, and even rents out 2 of the rooms in it to Airbnb regularly. She's by no means hurting for money. Sometime after the funeral my dad's will was read. Apparently he'd figured that if his heavy smoking didn't eventually do him in, something else would. And even joked about it in a pre-recorded video. I was pretty much willed nearly all of his assets from most of his money to his business and home. He left my sister a car, 2015 Nissan Altima, and about $10,000 in cash. My mother only got $1,000 and a few other items that she'd been claiming were rightfully hers since the divorce. Beyond that I got the rest. And my girlfriend now lives with me in the house my father passed down to me. My sister pretty much went from finishing 2 years of community college to living off her boyfriend and only working part-time online for several years. And during that time she got pregnant but suffered a traumatic miscarriage. I wasn't aware till after the funeral because we were practically no contact and no one else told me. When lockdown hit her boyfriend's job started downsizing little by little and eventually he was only able to stay on part-time. Which hampered hers and his finances to the point he was finally telling her she needed to look for better employment as well since he was trying to find a second job. And then she got pregnant. She claims her and her BF were careful, but calls it her miracle baby. One evening I got an unexpected knock at my door, and when I answered I was unpleasantly greeted by both my mother and sister. They both walked right in without even asking and made themselves comfortable in my living room. My girlfriend and I shared a look of confusion and I asked why they'd come by. My sister was giggling and looking all over, opening doors and seemingly giving herself a tour of my home. My mother had just plopped herself down on my sofa and snapped her fingers while demanding a cold bottled water. My GF got the water for her and I asked what they were here for. My sister seemed all giddy and just ignored me to continue snooping around my home. And before long I heard her yell from down the hall, "Mommy, it's perfect." Yes. She still calls her mommy. My mother finally spoke up and said, "Well, I think it's time to did your brotherly duty." To which I was like, "What?" My mother then proceeded to say, "Now that your father has passed, this house should have gone to me since I was his only spouse. But you can still fix this. You make plenty of money and could just buy a new house. Your sister needs this one so much more since she's the one with a baby on the way. But if you're so determined on staying, you could just keep to one room and cover all of the bills until you decide to move out." My GF and I read enough Reddit to know exactly where this is going, and how it'd play out if I let it go on. So I guess you could say we were mentally prepared. I took a deep breath and stated aloud, "That's not fucking happening. You don't order me around. Especially not in my own goddamn home. Yes, I make plenty of money. But like Dad, I'm gonna save it for when I really need it. Not that you care." My mother started snapping her fingers at me like she used to and loudly stated, "Stop. I am your mother. And you will do as I say because I brought you into this world, and I'm the one in charge here. And as far as you're concerned, I am God. That means when I say jump, you say how high. This house is rightfully mine. And your sister will live here. Consider this your formal eviction. But since I'm gracious, I'll give you 2 weeks to pack your bags and transfer the deed to me." In the back of my mind I'm thinking this can't be real. But then I just grabbed my cell phone and started dialing. My mother quickly stood up and yelled, "What are you doing?" And I retorted, "I'm doing what I should have done as soon as this shit started. I'm calling the cops to get you out of my fucking house." She started swiping at me and managed to knock my phone out of my hands. Then she proceeded to try and stomp on it. But I was quick enough to snatch it up before she could. "That's fucking it. If you don't leave I will force you out myself." My mother proceeded to slap me across the face, and I returned the favor twice as hard backhanded. So much so I ended up knocking her back down onto the couch. She held her hand over her reddening and smeared makeup face in total shock. And then yelled, "How dare you." I went back to dialing on my phone and said that if she didn't leave, I would have police come and remove her by force. My sister came barreling in between us holding her arms out and saying that I should just do the right thing for once in my life and be a good big brother. I snapped and said, "Oh really? I'm the bad sibling. Last I checked I was the one who's had to work for a living since I was a teenager. I had to do all the chores in the house while you just sat on your ass playing video games or talking with your friends all day. And you used to steal my hard-earned money just to go out shopping after you spent all of your allowance. You're a complete mooch and thief. So I don't owe you shit. Now both of you get out before I decide to dial this last number." My sister started to tear up crying like a baby and said, "Mommy, make him stop." My mother began hugging her and kissing her cheeks while giving me a death glare. Then she seemed to think she'd gotten smart and said, "You know, if you do call the police I can just tell them that you hit me. And who knows, I could maybe say to everyone you wanted to do a lot worse to a poor pregnant girl in need. I don't think that it'd be a very good thing for your." I cut her off with a raised hand and said, "Just stop. If you haven't noticed, my girlfriend over there has had her phone out recording almost this whole time. And that means we have recorded evidence of you assaulting me first and openly stating you'd lie to police. I don't think that it'd be so good for your reputation at your job, or your little Airbnb." If looks could kill, my mother would have blew me up like a tactical nuke. But she quickly deflated and started dragging my crying sister out by the arm. My sister was somehow acting like a complete toddler and broke loose of our mother's grip to sit down on my porch step and have a tantrum. I just gave my mother a look and said, "Do you see now? This is the result of the spoiled way you raised her." She glared at me again and then I was treated to a show of my mother trying to drag my sister off of my porch steps. But she latched onto the porch handrails and kept saying, "You promised me." Over and over again. I let out a cackle and told them both from the door to never come back. My mother flipped me the bird and then went back to trying to drag my sister off the porch. It took a few minutes, but she finally got my sister to get up and leave with her by saying, "I am a cruel, heartless bastard who will go to hell for this." I laughed some more and said that there's also a special place in hell for liars and narcissists who try to manipulate others to get their way. My mother clenched her fists and was about to say more when I just held up my smartphone again with it recording and said, "The clock is ticking, Mom. Get off my property." My mother then walked my sister to the car, gave me one last snooty look and drove off. I thought that was the end of it. But letting things go was never something my mother would do. After a few days I started getting messages from people I know and some relatives online. A lot of them were furious with me, but others just had questions about what was going on. I tried to check my FB, but couldn't see anything they were saying because my sister and mother both blocked me on their social media. But my girlfriend could still see everything because they kept their profiles set to open. We screenshotted everything and then printed some of it out. Both of their profiles had posts that called me a greedy, heartless bastard who stole the house that was meant to be my sister's inheritance right out from under her by paying off the lawyer who handled Dad's will. which is a complete and utter lie and they both know it. I called my lawyer, who was also my father's lawyer and a trusted family friend, and gave him copies of all the screenshots from FB and the video my girlfriend had recorded the day my mother demanded my house. He wanted to just write a formal C&D, but I wanted to take it further than that. And he sent them a letter I told him to write via express mail that had to be signed for. So I know they got it. My mother called me in an absolute fury the same day the letter was delivered. I told her that if she and my sister didn't redact all of the untrue social media posts they made about me and tell the absolute truth, I'd send all of the information I have to the whole family, her boss, and upload the videos we'd recorded of her online. And then I'd sue her on top of it. She called me unreasonable, and that she just did what she did for my sister's sake. And then went into a full-blown lecture reiterating her belief that my sister still needs my house more than me. I bluntly stated I didn't care what she thought. And if she didn't redact everything and tell the truth I'd make sure her career would be over. She begrudgingly said fine. You win. Have it your way and keep the fucking house. Before hanging up the phone. That very evening all of the lying posts disappeared from both their profiles. I was unblocked, and my mother gave me and everyone else a half-assed apology claiming she jumped the gun with everything she said because she thought my sister needed my house more than me because she's broke and pregnant. But the house was rightfully mine according to my father's will, and she knew that even before my father passed away. So she had no right to try and claim it. As for my sister, she also apologized, but more or less just parroted everything our mother said while claiming she just went along with her ideas. And then she blamed what she did all on our mother and her pregnancy hormones. The replies poured in for some time on both my mother and sister's profiles. Many furious with them for trying to take my house. I got a lot messages of sorries and my bads from those who'd previously believed her. But all it really did was show me who was more on her side to begin with since they were all believing her nonsense so quickly. They were mostly people from her side of the family anyway. No one on my father's side believed her at all. And openly said so. My sister and her boyfriend ended up moving in with our mother to save money. But she put them in the basement to keep her Airbnb running. And my sister started crying on social media that she can't live upstairs. And I'm pretty sure the two of them were fighting with each other because all my sister did after that is complain online. And my mother barely posted anything on her SM anymore because of the previous stunt she'd tried.